Hi everyone. In today's tutorial we're going to model this StarBall twist that you see here. Alright, this is actually a render of an object that I created in 3dsmax using the techniques I'll show you today. Alright, but this we're going to do this so that the object can be later taken to 3D print from a service like Shapeways, which uses selective laser sintering to create complex shapes. All right, and then 3D print them in the real world. All right, and I actually have this object at my Shapeways store, which I'll provide a link in the description if you want to check that out afterwards. All right, but let's begin. All right, we'll open up 3dsmax to an empty scene here. And the first thing we'll do is expand the viewport by holding Alt and tapping on the W key. All right, and we want to make sure that our scene is set up to model in millimeters and export the object in millimeters as well, since that's what most services like Shapeways will use by default is millimeters. So that's what we'll use. So go to Customize and then down to Unit Setup, and the display unit scale is already set to metric, and I have mine on millimeters by default. But if yours is not set to this, just tick the metric display and then open up the drop down box and select millimeters. And after you do that, that'll change your scene so that the units are millimeters in the grid. But you'll also want to change the system unit setup here on the button at the top. And system unit scale should also be 1 unit equals 1.0 millimeters. So sometimes this is on a different measurement, so you want to change that as well. Okay, and then just click OK and OK, and then your scene is now set up for real-world modeling. Okay, so to begin, we're going to go over here to our extended primitives, and we're going to open up the Hydra object and just randomly put it in the scene there. All right, I'm tapping J to get rid of the bounding box brackets. All right, now we're going to type in a radius here to be specific. All right, so we're going to use 25.4 millimeters, which is approximately 1 inch, or exactly 1 inch diameter. And we're going to change the family to the dodecicos, and we're going to change the family parameters. So the P parameter will be 0.6, and the Q parameter will be 0.2. Okay, and that will give us this object here. Alright, so before we continue, I'm just going to quickly tap the M key to bring up my material editor. And I'm just going to drag and drop a standard gray material on the object. Alright, and I'll change the wire colors to black so that you can better see what I'm doing here in the viewport. Okay, so we have our Hydra object, in the scene, and the first step is to apply an Edit Poly modifier. Alright, so with the Edit Poly applied, I'm tapping F4 to reveal my edged faces here. With the Edit Poly, we're going to go into the Polygon level and just select one of these triangular n-gons. Alright, then from the graphite ribbon, I'm going to select my Select Similar option, and that'll grab all of those faces along the object. And I'm just going to delete them just by tapping on the delete on the keyboard. Okay, and that removes it and leaves this framework here. Alright, so then we're going to switch over to our edge subobject level and just grab one of these long edges along that framework. Alright, and then again to Select Similar, and that will grab all of them around the object. And then we're just going to connect. I have connect attached to a hotkey on my keyboard. However, you can just go up here into the graphite modeling ribbon. It's here, or it's over on the it's also on the right hand side in the command panels. Alright, so I just connected those two together here with a new edge. All right, now with those new edges still selected, I'm going to tap R to switch to my scale tool. Okay, and right up here at the top of the UI, you'll see your pivot point placement options. By default, it's at Use Pivot Point Center. Okay, we're going to press on it and then scroll down until we get the Use Selection Center pivot placement. Okay, then come down here at the bottom to your absolute mode transform, type in and enable it. And then we're going to change the 100 to 110 and hit enter. All right, and that just scales out those edges about 10% and gives us a more rounded object here. Okay. All right, so now with that finished, we're going to go ahead and add a shell modifier. Now we're not going to add an outer amount at this point, so we'll put that at 0.0. However, we'll change our inner amount to about 6.0 millimeters. All right, and that gives us this. And we could even go more than 6. I think we can go down to 8.0. Should be fine. All right, so 8.0 on the inner amount. And then we'll add an edit poly modifier on top of that. And immediately we'll go into edge mode, and the previous edges that we had selected are still selected, which is convenient because at this point we can just go ahead and loop that selection, and that'll give us the edge loops all around there, as you can see. Okay, so we just loop those. And after you have all of these selected, you'll go over here on the right hand side in the command panel under the edit edges rollout. You'll see split, and you can go ahead and click split, and what that did is it cut the object along the selected edge loops that we had there. So it has actually turned each one of these into a separate element. All right, so now that we've done that, what we want to do is, if you look closely, you'll see that these are separate elements now. However, they all have holes in them here. Okay, on each one of these arm extrusions. All right, so we want to cap those, and the easiest way to do that is go to your border selection mode, and just using the rectangular selection region, we're going to draw out a rectangle around the entire object, and that will select only the open edges on the object. All right, the open border faces, I should say. All right, so there we are. They're all selected. Now from here, we're going to cap them. All right, so just click on your cap poly in the graphite ribbon, or you can go over here and click cap under the edit borders. All right, and that should have capped all of those holes for us. All right, I'm tapping F3 to come back into realistic view here with edge faces, tapping J to get rid of the bounding box. All right, so now with our borders still selected, I'm going to hold down Shift and Control and click the Polygon icon here under my selection panel. And what that has done is gone and used the border selection to go ahead and select those new faces automatically. All right, so let me do that again just to show you. So here we have our border selection. I'm holding down Control and Shift and going to my face mode, and it selected the faces that we just created with the cap poly. All right, so now that we have those selected, we're going to rotate them, and tap on the E key to bring up your rotate gizmo. All right, and up here now with the pivot point, we'll want to switch it again to the use selection centers. Okay, and then come down here to your offset transform type in, and in the Z parameter we're going to type in 90. And that failed for me for some reason. Let me back that up. I know exactly what went wrong, so let me undo that. Okay, we also need to switch our reference coordinate system to local. And that's the key here, is to make sure you're in local reference coordinate system, or you'll have that that problem happen to you that just happened there. All right, so now that we're in local, we can go ahead and type in 90, and that will rotate those faces in place and twist these arms. All right, so now we have a twisted shape here. Okay, so now what we want to do is delete those faces and weld these seams together so that we have one solid object again. All right, so I'm going to use a little selection trick here. Now that we have these faces selected, I'm going to hold down Control and switch to vertex mode in the selection panel. All right, and now that has selected only those vertices that are attached to those faces that were previously selected. Now I'm going to go back to polygon mode and just delete those polygons. All right, and now they're deleted. However, if we go back to vertex level, those vertices that we had previously selected are still selected. So that's convenient for the next step, which is to just weld those vertices together. So I'm shift clicking on weld to bring up my caddy, and you can see that by default the weld threshold is 0.1 millimeters. All right, so before we had 480, after is 360, and that's exactly what we want. So I'm going to click the check mark to accept that. All right, so now we're all welded up just on these selected vertices. All right, so now the next step is to add a mesh smooth modifier. All right, I have mine, my UI is customized up here, so I have all of my most useful modifiers right here on buttons. However, if you just scroll down the modifier list and tap M, it should bring you to all the modifiers that begin with M, and mesh smooth is in there. All right, so add a mesh smooth to the top of that, and we're going to use mesh smooth specifically for the subdivision methods that it has here. All right, unlike turbo smooth, which is or the new open subdiv, which is an excellent subdivision modifier, the old mesh smooth has 3 different subdivision methods, and they offer us a little bit of a surface control that the others don't. So we're going to switch the method to classic, which is the Dusabin style of subdivision. Okay, so that gives us this. So with mesh smooth on there, we can go ahead and now add an edit poly modifier on top of that, and we can immediately go to the face level, the polygon level, I'm sorry, and we're going to start selecting some polygon face loops here. All right, so let's zoom in just a little bit. Now we're going to look directly at one of these starfish-like formations on the object, and just rotate a little bit until you're right here. You could see this middle set of face loops going around the object on every side, right? So we're going to select the first one right in the middle of the object there. Okay, and I'm going to tap X to get rid of the gizmo temporarily while we do this next procedure, and I'm going to select these face loops. All right, and I'm going to do that on every side of this starfish formation. All right, around it like this. All right, just selecting face loops. All right, so that was 5 face loops around the object. However, this object has 6 points of similarity, so we're going to need one more. You'll see if you roll around here, you'll see that there's one face loop that hadn't been selected, so we're going to go and select that one as well. All right, so now we have all of the face loops around the entire object selected that we need. Alright, so from here I'm going to hold down Control and tap I to invert my selection, and then just delete those polygons. We don't need them at this point now. Alright, so now what we're left with is this surface ribbon in the form of a ball here. So at this point we could go ahead and add a shell modifier. On the inner amount we'll type in 2.0, alright, which is 2 millimeters. Alright, and we're having some intersections here, as you can see. Okay, so what we might want to do is go down one in the modifier stack and add a push modifier beneath the shell. Okay, and let's give it a push value of 1.0 millimeters and see if that helps. Alright, so now that we've added the push value underneath the shell modifier, you can see what's happening here is it's giving us some clearance. So I'm going to give it 1 millimeter of a push value, which opens up that clearance to about half a millimeter, I would say. Okay, and we're not intersecting anymore now on the object, so we're looking good. Alright, so I'm going to back out, go back up to my shell modifier. Now, 2 millimeters is good for the strong and flexible plastic. You know, that will give you a nice solid object in your print. Okay, and that's what I've used in my object on my store. Alright, but if you wanted to print this in a metal substance, you would need to go a little thicker. You would need to go to about 3 millimeters thickness in order to have a sufficiently strong object. So in that case, you would have to change the radius a little bit by adding some outer shell amount, and you can add a 1.0 millimeters to the outer amount, and you still have some clearance there. Alright, so we're at 3 millimeters. I'm happy with that. Alright, so I'm going to add an edit poly. Well, actually, let's go back down to the shell modifier, and we will scroll down and select our edges. Alright, in the shell. Now let's remove that edit poly, and we'll select the edges. Alright, and then we'll add a new edit poly on top of the shell, and when we go to our polygon selection, those edges are selected. Alright, and that's going to be useful because we can shift click our inset button and bring up the caddy, and we'll do a type in value of let's say 0.3 millimeters. Alright, and we'll create an inset there. Alright, accept that. Alright, so now what we'll do is we'll grow that selection one time, and then we'll invert, and then do the same operation, the same inset operation. Alright, so now you can see that that has created a nice chamfer on our edges all around the object very quickly. Alright, so I'll Control D to deselect everything. And finally, now we could, if you want to collapse this stack, you can. At this point, the hard part is done. If you're happy with your object and you don't want to make any more changes to it, you can collapse the stack. I like to leave mine intact in case when I upload to Shapeways or some other service, if I have to make changes to the object, I can do so freely here. Alright, but I'm going to add a turbo smooth modifier now. Alright, and I'm going to give it at least 2 iterations, but 3 might be the best way to go. Alright, before you export to an STL file. And here's the object. And you could see at each point of symmetry we have a star shape, and then it twists around itself. And we don't have any intersecting arms or anything, so it's a pretty unique shape. Alright, so that's how to achieve this. Again, I'll put some links in my description if you want to check those out. Before I quit here, we're going to look at this. I'll tap T to go into the top view, and we can check our settings, measurements I should say. So I'm going to go to helpers and bring up a tape measure, and I'll start at the longest point here, and I'll just drag it out to the other point, to the other side. And yeah, we're at about 49 millimeters. So roughly 50 millimeters in diameter. So it's a pretty big object. This will be a fairly expensive print. However, you know, it could make a nice desktop showpiece, and or some kind of stress ball if you print it in the strong and flexible. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'm sorry that it took so long to get a new video up lately. I've been very, very busy, but I'm back on track now, and I'll be adding more videos more frequently. So please subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to like this video. And I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you again very shortly.